today's show. Danny Marang of Jacked Ramseys 1080 The Fan joins the program, and we talk about the Blazers' future, their present, and everything in between. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter Mike Richmond. You are listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of Locked On Podcast Network. Available wherever you get podcasts, coming at you 3 days a week, all August long and into September. Usually they come out Monday, Wednesday, Friday, y'all, but I went out of town. And then I didn't get back fast enough. So we're on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday schedule this week. And joining me, it's Marang week, it's Danny week, it's Marangatang week, whatever you want to call it. Joining me from 1080 The Fan and Jacked Ramseys. You've heard him yell into microphones everywhere. It's Danny Marang. How you doing, Danny?
Not too bad, man. It's always weird. I'm one of those podcast people who goes at 1.5 or 1.25 speed. So when I hear your intro music, it's like, is it going to get there? Is it going to get there? Like it feels so slow because I'm not used to hearing it at like the normal rate. I was like, why does this sound so weird to me right now?
Everyone that I know personally who listens to the podcast, they all listen to it fast, which is funny because I already talk pretty fast. And two, it's like, you can't spend more time with me. I don't swear on here. It's a family show, but many times I want to be like, oh, and to my friends out there listening to this at 1.8 speed, I hate you. Just kidding. I appreciate everybody out there. Danny, we're going to talk all things Blazers today or this week. If you missed the shows in August, we're doing weekly shows. We had Hiking Week with Sean Hiking. We had Sprague Week with Brandon Sprague. It's Marang Week. So we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff this week, but I want to start in today's episode talking about kind of what happened this offseason. And I want to start here by asking this. Who's the Blazers' best player?
Right this second, Jeremy or Ant, depending on which way you slice it. I think it makes the most sense. Rarest commodity, Jeremy, 6'9" guy.
Right, most tradable value, Jeremy Grant. Yeah.
Ant, I mean, everybody knows where I stand with Ant. I know I've got my corner pegged on that, but 24 point per game scores that can shoot, 45, 40, 90 don't grow on trees. As you can see when he's on the floor, the difference in what they can do offensively. After that, I think you kind of have like a sliding scale of like what's more important, whether it's the ability of DA to hit shots inside 10 feet, the idea of Shaedon.
Right, what Shaedon Sharpe might be.
Yeah, and then Denny. Honestly, Denny right now today might be the third best player on the roster today.
Denny Avdija has an outside chance to be the best player on the roster, I would say.
I think you can make that argument, particularly after February 10th.
The trade deadline is actually February 6th.
I'm saying by the time everybody gets into town, everybody gets done. Yeah, I get a game or two. Yep. Oh, we see what this is.
Yeah. So I asked that to say the Blazers have a lot of young and interesting parts. Scoot Anderson's an interesting part. Shaedon Sharpe, as you mentioned, is an interesting part. Donovan Clingan is an interesting part. Denny Avdija is an interesting part. But I don't think any of the young players yet have graduated to the level of best player on the team.
No.
With that in mind, how do you view what they did this summer? Like in terms of the moves they made and the moves they didn't make. Let's start with Denny. What did you make of the Denny move when it first went down?
So like anything else, I'm going to take your question and I'm going to distort it and do it the way I want to do it. The number one, I love Denny as a player. I had literally checked in 2 or 3 days prior to that trade with somebody I know it's very close to with Washington. And I was like, hey, what would it take to get Corey Kispert? Because I didn't think Denny was like remotely available. And we kind of went back and forth, and I was like, okay, that I could see Portland kind of looking at that. And I was like, I'd like Denny, but I just don't think Portland's there yet. I don't think that they're willing to give up the capital, and I didn't think Washington would make him available. Going into the draft, I wanted the Blazers to take a wing at 7. That's what I wanted them to do. Cody Williams was the guy that I was very much locked in on. And I was like, okay, if you're going to do that, then you look at a big at 14. You look at Kello Ware. Like that, Cody Kalel was kind of where I started shifting towards things. If a guy like Salon fell to 14, like that, you wanted to call him kind of a big wing. Okay, cool. But I really wanted them to address the wing position. Getting Denny allowed them to address the wing position, which I thought was the most important thing for them to address.
Sure.
And then get the most value out of their draft pick at 7, which was taking Klingon. The deal for Denny right away, I saw the sticker shock over the picks, and I literally put my foot down immediately, and I said, this is the best non-rookie scale contract in the NBA. I have 2 different general managers that I have talked to that have specifically called it that. And his play is, and I've heard you talk about this a bunch of times, and I couldn't agree more. The number of questions that Portland has outside of like the ubiquitous star player, Denny has the ability to answer. Like everybody wants to talk about, they need a wing. It's like, well, they need a wing that can also play make. Well, he does that. They need a wing who can shoot. He started to show the shooting progression. I think that's the thing that everything hangs up on. The functional defense, both as a big wing and on guards. Like if you go back, I've little tease here. I've got a thing that I'm working on Denny, a full film breakdown. And I went back and watched probably 25 of his games last year, and including the one against Portland where he picked up Scoot full court.
He guarded Scoot. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I mean, and he rode him, just put him in hell over and over and over again. And Scoot's a great athlete. And for Denny to be able to be a guy who can do that for that many possessions while also carry some offensive burden, I was pretty impressed with. The thing I haven't seen people talk about too much is everybody looks at Denny as a rebounder and like, yeah, he's a pretty good rebounder. He's the second best rebounding wing in the entire NBA. Like I don't. Yeah,
he could definitely help there for sure because you can play. Tumani is not a great rebounder, but he's okay, and obviously Jeremy Grant's terrible. So it's like you can mix and match with the other wings and still be a pretty good rebounding team. And they were awful as a defensive rebounding team last year. Is one of their big issues. Is one of the
and that's the thing
they struggle
with Denny. Denny's defensive rebounding. Like if you go to Cleaning the Glass, shout out Ben Falk, defensive rebounding rates in his 4 years in his career. 94th, 90th, 97th, 93rd percentile. That's it. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
and he's him and he can grab and go. Yeah, he can grab and go off rebounds. It lets them do different things. So yeah, I like him to, it's like he's going to be, whatever the third best player on a team that wins 30 games or less. 23. But I wonder. So you mentioned the sticker shock. Is it curious to you, or was it surprising to you that not the price for Denny, because I think the price is very reasonable, all things considered. The money to make it work with Malcolm Brogdon and the number of draft picks is pretty reasonable, but that the Blazers were the team to send out the picks, like the type of where the Blazers are. Does that surprise you a little bit?
It did initially, not necessarily because it was the Blazers made the move, because I didn't think a guy like Denny would be available. How common is it for a 23-year-old to be made available? It's good. Like, you know what I mean? That's the thing to me that's more of I think that the surprise was that he was made available. Guys like him, and I'm not saying he's the same player, but like 3 years ago, Mikal Bridges, like those players aren't available for a very good reason, because they're very good two-way wings with plus size on very good contracts. And when those kind of guys pop up, those are the guys everybody wants. And now I've confirmed that Portland did try to go get him at the trade deadline, and they just couldn't come to a deal. And I would imagine pretty strongly that has to do with where the Warriors pick was. I mean, if it's 6, 7, 8, it has a little bit more value if the Warriors are in the tank. And so you're kind of like, yeah, I don't know if we can give that up. Even in a draft that wasn't that great, there is a very real difference between 6, 7, 8, and 14. I think
sure, yeah, just the number of decisions made in front of you, obviously.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think once that pick was locked in, they resumed talks and were able to go get that deal done. And that, to me, like when I said I didn't think Portland would do this, Joe Cronin has been very specific about saying they want players. And in my coverage of the team, I've been very specific when reporting about trades and transactions and things that have happened behind the scenes and guys that they've looked at, of saying very often they are not interested in draft capital that's 5 years out. cat's out of the bag, folks. GMs that trade for picks that far out either have the best job security in the world or none. Like the guy, and that's the thing is, unless you're Danny Ainge, unless you're Sam Presti, unless you're R.C. Buford, you don't have that. Well, I guess Rob Pelinka because Jeannie Buss loves him. You don't have that level of like, I can trade for picks and sit on these for 5, 6, 7 years and know that I'm going to be with the organization forever. And so I think they wanted to go get something, number one, tangible because they need it. But beyond that, they can't continue to roll the dice at 5, 6, 7 years out because Joe Cronin, Mike Schmitz, Sergey, Andre, those guys won't be making decisions. Because honestly, I think after this cycle, this Cooper Flag year, whether it's Cooper, whether it's Ace, whether it's Dylan, VJ, any of those guys, they have to show improvement after that.
Okay, let's talk about that. I want to talk about that. We'll do that in the second segment because, listen, at some point you have to try to win. When are they going to do it? Let's talk about that in the second segment. But first, I want to tell you that today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. It's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Whether that's superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed or power or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from, your ride or die is always going to have what it needs, and you're always going to find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, still chatting here with Danny Marang. You've heard him on 1080 The Fan and Jacked Ramseys. You mentioned something in the break, before the break rather, that at some point, that maybe as soon as in the 2025-2026 season, it'll be show and prove time. And I've had this conversation with a bunch of my Blazer fan friends. They say, hey, Mike, like, when are they going to try to win? Like, when is the time to try to win? Because I would call this rebuild approach somewhat non-traditional. Because while they have gone the way of lose egregiously at all costs at the end of seasons, which is like a fairly typical of teams that are trying to lose, they haven't dumped everybody. Like, no, Jeremy Grant is still here, right? And every time it's still here. And when they traded Damian Lillard, they didn't prioritize cap space. They traded for DeAndre Ayton, who is like a fat contract, right? Like they've gone a non-traditional route. They've been a team that's maintained in like the nerdy way salary slots or whatever. We'll see what they do with those salary slots. And by that, I mean, big money contracts you could conceivably trade for other people who are making money, like Denny Avdia makes money. He's an adult. Not that much money, though. Very cheap. No. When do they try to win? I think it's pretty clear this year's not the year, right? Like, even if they're perfectly healthy, even like the rosiest, I mean, so I've seen the internet. Some people think they can win 41 games. And I like that optimism. I champion those people, but I'm glad those people exist. I'm glad those people exist, and they get very mad at me. They are going to purposely steer this thing off a cliff. Like, but even then, even before the cliff, the West is very talented. Even then, they're like, when they start the season, Mike, look, the closest thing they're going to come to being competitive and, like, air quotes, caring about wins is when night one, and look, I'm not certain of this. I very strongly hold this belief. Your starting lineup will be Anthony, Shaden, Denny, Jeremy Da. Because with Chauncey Billups, I will say this unequivocally. Anthony Simons will not come off the bench. Oh, yeah, obviously. Yeah. I've seen way too many people. Well, they need to prioritize Scoot. Scoot has done nothing close. And also, Scoot can play 28 minutes a night coming off the bench. Yes, like, it doesn't, you're not. Gone. And I three guards is not a problem. No, it's the fourth guard. And they have three guards. Yeah. Three guards is not a problem. We disagreed early on about Scoot coming off the bench. And then I think you said something later, and then you're like, maybe it was kind of a good thing that he had a little bit of a restart. He ended up being. I didn't know he was going to be one of the worst players in the NBA 5 games in. I was just like, God, let my man play. And then he struggled, and I was like, yeah, maybe my man. Maybe he can watch.
pull it back a little
Maybe
bit. But
yeah.
with all that said, like that's the most they're gonna push towards that. And even then, that's not going to be enough to get them there. And like they're going to steer off into the mountain, off the mountain, however you want to phrase it, after the All-Star break. Like it's going to be egregious. You've covered that, and that's what's going to happen. But it's all because of the opening question: who's the Blazers' best player? They don't have a foundational piece, and they are striving for a foundational piece. And this season, I've heard with Sprague and Hyken talking about the season who's most important for. It's Shaden. I'm sorry, it's not Shaden. It's Scoot, and it's not even close. It's Scoot more than anybody. We're going to talk about Shaden. I'm more comfortable that Shaden's going to figure it out. Is he going to figure it out enough? I don't know. But this draft, if you're not taking Cooper or Ace, the next three best prospects are guards.
Right.
Whether it's Nolan Traore, whether it's VJ Edgecombe, whether it's Dylan Harper. And if Scoot doesn't show real fast that he's that guy, and those guys all profile better than him, you start having to make that decision. And the front office does not want that. I mean, good Lord.
It doesn't reflect well on the front office to pick a point guard third overall. And I don't view it this way, but I do believe many fans do, is that they chose Scoot over Dame. They chose the draft pick over Dame.
Yes.
They chose the draft pick over Dame. The pick.
If Brandon Miller was there, if it was the other way around, it would have been Brandon. Like that's
they chose the pick, right? I don't think they said Scoot Henderson will replace Dame. They say, no, we're going to choose at 3 because we believe in it. But if midway through his rookie deal, if Scoot Henderson is someone that you're ready to bail on, that reflects very poorly on the front office. Yes. So let me ask it again. When do they try to win? Do they obviously
the pressure is on next year.
Even if they were to get Cooper Flagg, they're not going to just like magically be very good.
But you have to go into that season with, okay, now it's Scoot, Shaden, and whoever's here, whatever the decision they make there, Coop, Denny, DA at that point.
Right. And we can be if nothing else, the 9th best team in the West.
If they're the 12th best, guess what? Then they can be the Rockets.
Right.
I hate that line so much because I have no idea where that came from. Like that, I talked to a lot of people in this organization. I have never heard anybody once refer, we want to be the Houston Rockets. It was such a weird line.
Well, we'll see. Maybe they do. In any case. So if the pressure's on next year, I guess from this season, obviously it's really important that the young guys get good. What are the other steps that they, so in your mind, like priority steps they have to take, whether that's individual development, whether that's transactions, like from here to, April, what are things that have to get done one way or another?
I've seen a lot of people say that they need to like make sure that things are set up going forward. And I as much as I would love to say that, you don't know who you're selecting. And so you don't know if it's going to be Coop. I mean, sure. Right now, August, whatever it is today. Yeah, you want it to be Cooper Flagg.
You can timestamp this. I'm going to release it in a few hours.
My watch didn't load. Literally, I was like, there we go. It's 12.
Okay, we're recording this on August 12th, and this you are listening, dear listener, to August 13th's program. So yeah, like in the middle of August.
There you go. Today, Coop's the number 1 prospect by a pretty substantial margin. I watched pretty much every one of these guys that's going to be in the top 5 of this class at Hoop Summit. Coop was different, man. Like I have not come away from a Hoop Summit maybe ever feeling the way that I did about Cooper Flagg, watching him all week at practice and watching him compete. I mean, that dude is different. I mean, you saw the stuff that came out of Team USA, man. There's a different wiring to that kid. Now, Ace Bailey, talent-wise, this kid's 6'9" with a 39-inch vert and ability to hit from all over the floor. Dylan Harper is a 6'5", 215-pound point guard with NBA pedigree and all of the tools. Like, you've got these guys. You don't know which one of those guys you're going to get and you're going to bet on. So if you decide, like, well, we need to make sure that things are ready at the point guard position, and then all of a sudden you end up drafting VJ Edgecombe, well, guess what? Now you've got to reset again because you don't know what you have. And that's the thing is, like, so I want them to you live long enough to become the villain. I'm going to go unfold Neil Olshey here. You need to maintain flexibility. I don't think you can commit to anything long-term for anyone that's going to kind of muck up the process, as it were. And everyone's like, well, Jeremy Grant. Look, man, I know 3 different teams that want Jeremy Grant right now. There's not going to be a problem to move Jeremy Grant. Like, that's for everybody who's worried about that. Oh, God, he's not blocking anything right now. And to be honest, I think if Jeremy wants out at the trade deadline, there's going to be plenty of suitors for him. So I think the big thing is see what you have in Scoot, if he's the guy or not. See what you have in Shaedon. How well can Denny play the 3 and the 4? How well does he work alongside and with Shaedon and Scoot and Ant if he's going to be the guy? And then the guy we haven't mentioned yet, Klingon. Like, is he a guy? Because look, man, seeing him in person in Summer League, every coach, every player, both on the Blazers and the opponents that I talked to, first thing they said, each and every one of them, so big. So big. Like, I just kept saying, he's just so big. He's so big. And his timing, his ability around the rim defensively, offensively needs a lot of work, but we'll figure that out. Everything that was there was so just effortless, with like, you knew what was going to translate already, because big men just never looked that good defensively. Hell, they just don't look good at that in general at Summer League. So, but my biggest question for him is not the offense. Can you play 28 plus minutes a night? Like, I just don't know if that 7'2", 290-pound dude can run up and down the floor for 112 possessions. Like, maybe he's Nurk and it's just not in the cards because he's just too big.
Right. And Nurk maxed out at like 29, I think.
And that was like, and he was huffing and puffing, and you kind of had to manage the final 4 minutes, and it's not a knock. He's a massive human. Like, that's just,
big. It's tough for big guys. Yeah.
Jokic is the only one. He's the only one that could just sit there and just keep running and running and running. And you're like, how? Like, you look like you rip heaters all day. How are you doing this? It's just, it's whatever Serbian magic he has. But those are the questions that I have. It's almost inherently all development. And then once you know the draft position, then it's like absolutely unequivocally get to work time for this front office. Because at that point, no matter who it is, whether it's Dylan, whether it's Ace, VJ, Nolan, any of these guys, whoever it is, the chips are getting pushed in. The front office has had their time. They've had their resets. If the lottery gods don't smile on them, they don't smile on them. And that's just the way this goes. It's unfair, however you want to slice it. But when you get 4 lotto shots,
right, you got it. You need to be, you need to be
come out with something.
Yeah. You need to have players above average starters is if nothing else. Okay. I got another question about moves that they haven't made because they haven't made them yet. Let's talk about that to close the show. Still a pass first point guard. I'm still Mike Richmond. You're still listening to Locked On Blazers. Still chatting with Danny Marang of Jacked Ramseys and 1080 The Fan. So I agree with you that the most important thing that happens to them this year is find out which of the young guys are capable, right? And what capable looks like. And I'm not sure that Scoot Henderson is going to be like great or whatever. There's a lot of good point guards in the NBA. Jumping up even to like an above average point guard in the league would be like meteoric, right? Yeah. But it'll be obvious it'll be pretty obvious if he plays 75 games, it'll be obvious whether he's like ready or not. And you might not know his ultimate ceiling, but it'll be pretty obvious. Shaedon Sharpe, he just hasn't had that many games, but his highs are high. And so if he gets there, I think you'll know too. I agree with that. And I'll ask about Klingon a little more in a second, but like, if they have to be somewhat competitive next season in whatever way that looks like, can you do that with going into the season with Anthony Simons on expiring contract, DeAndre Ayton on expiring contract, and like knowing that you're kind of unsettled? Or would those things in your eyes be something that you take care of in the summer once you figure it all out? Or is there some urgency to kind of address those types of things and throw Jeremy Grant in that same pot, kind of like the veterans? I don't believe in that timeline. I'm not going to swear, but I don't believe in the timeline stuff. Hold on. I actually am going to complain about this for a second.
Go.
What a timeline means in the NBA when someone talks about 2 timelines, you know what that means? It means the young players are bad. Is that what it means? It means when people say that the Warriors are on 2 timelines, what it means is that Moses Moody isn't very good. Yeah. When they say they're on 2 timelines, it means Jonathan Kuminga wasn't ready to win a championship. But when all the
James
players are good,
wasn't a basketball player.
Right. It's like when your team's good, it doesn't matter how old everyone is. That's not actually that important. You just need good players to play and win the games. It didn't matter that Kawhi Leonard was significantly younger than Tim Duncan. It was very useful.
Or when the Jays first came in, we're making Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, it's
children.
bizarre, right? It's all so stupid. Timeline. Younger players are typically worse than older players, but I guess like in that, what is the urgency? Not even from the organizational standpoint, but in terms of your opinion, what should their urgency be when addressing the trade of guys like Anthony Simons and DeAndre Ayton entering the final 2 years of their contract, and Jeremy Grant, who has certainly been in trade rumors all summer long?
I said this last summer as it pertained to Scoot and Ant, is that they had to have an answer by this coming summer. They have 2 years to figure it out. Like, it's one way or the other. You need to make a decision. You need to either go, oh God, I'm going to say this out loud. The worst case scenario, Scoot Henderson is smarter Eric Bledsoe. And you go, oh man, this isn't going to work. We need to be more competitive. And even if Ant has whatever flaws you want to point out, we know we can run an offense with him. And
he's also just like better at basketball.
Yeah.
So like, if Scoot doesn't get there, it's flaws and all. There is the other guy's flawed too.
Yeah. And then you go, well, with this guy, I know he can run an offense and go 25-5. Like that's, you know that, and do it with efficiency. And Shaedon and him can both work together. You know that they can both play on and they can both play off the ball. Like it's not like a fit issue. And now if Scoot goes, hey, I can finish at the rim now and I'm viable as a 3-point shooter, it changes fundamentally everything, and that's the thing. I think if he doesn't need to come out and be, point guard, he needs to come out and be like 17-6 on plus efficiency.
He literally needs to make like 6 more layups a month. Yeah, 6 more layups a month.
Like just
I agree.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like that. That's the thing that's you decide. Everybody's like, oh no, they're married to Scoot. No, they're not. They're not married to it. I hate saying this because I love these guys as people. Like I love Scoot, I love Ant, I love Shay. Like they're great kids. Love talking to them. They've been great over the last couple of years. But I don't think the Blazers organization is married to anyone at this point.
They have a lot of organizational investment in Scoot Henderson. I would push back against that.
Organizationally, sure. Yeah. But as far as like, would it be impossible to see them choosing Ant over Scoot? I don't think so. I think it would be a very, very, very difficult decision. As I
said, they either got a Monte Ellis Ant or they got a Tyrese Halliburton Scoot. They got to figure it out. They got that. What's your timeline on that? Do you think is that something they have to address at the trade deadline? Is that something they can? Is that something
one of those things that you can't address? If you're addressing at the deadline, the decision has been made for you.
Right, because Scoot Henderson
has been good, and I think that's kind of what you're going to do.
Let me advocate for someone who rarely needs to be advocated for, but what if I say that Anthony Simons is not good enough to be part of the lead guard on a really good team, and so I don't care whether Scoot Henderson sucks or not, and has to be traded because you have to get value for players as opposed to giving him more money? Is there a world in which they choose? Is there a world in which they choose neither?
I think so, but I think it would be organizationally. I know they do like Ant. Like I know that's an actual.
Tell Joe to mention his name at press conferences. Then,
yeah, they wish they had that one back. Guarantee you, they wish they had that one back. But I think that there is a hesitance to just trade Ant away because I think they genuinely do value him. Now, whether that has real tangible value on the market, I think is up for debate. I've talked to people who said, I've heard absolutely nothing about teams wanting Anthony Simons. I've talked to people saying, I know of teams X, Y, and Z, and I know of a couple teams that have called on Anthony Simons. And so it's kind of like, okay, what month is it? What are teams pursuing kind of deal? But I think it's one of those situations more so that I think a decision will be made for them as opposed to, okay, we don't know what we want to do. And one of them has to go and we're just going to go with a younger guy. I think they would make an active decision, although organizationally under Joe, I don't think they've made a ton of active decitions.
They traded Norman Powell pretty quick.
That's true. And Cove got them out of there pretty quick.
That's a funny thing. It's like the first move Joe Cronin made was like a week before the deadline, his first deadline. It was like, why did this dude do this now? Why did he wait? Why didn't he wait? Like, I can't believe he didn't wait. Like, oh my God, this dude's, he just pulled. And then every other move since then, it's like, why did he wait so damn long? What is this guy doing?
I mean,
so,
there are certainly things that needed to be resolved that facilitated that move a little quicker.
Yeah. And also, like, it's different when you're prioritizing getting cheaper and younger, you can value things differently. Like, I think the interesting part about this, from this point forward, like you said, is like there's some pressure to get good, is like they need to make moves that improve the team in the probably near and medium term future, but also they don't exactly have players that easily necessitate immediate upgrades. And so it's like, how do they get from where they are to where they want to go? And that's why I mentioned, like, maybe is there a world in which they choose neither? They say Anthony Simon's not good enough to pay him into the future. If we could find a taker for him, if the Spurs finally come a calling, get him in San Antonio, he would be useful. He would be really useful there, I think. Yeah. And they're probably more interested than Orlando. The only people interested in Orlando are bloggers. Shout out to my people, my good people who want to trade Ant to Orlando. It's not anyone who works for the Orlando Magic. But is there, I just think there's a world in which they say Ant's not good enough to be an anchor of what we do next, and Scoot Henderson is not. But
he's on a second scale contract, so
we're not even choosing Scoot. We're gonna draft freaking the French point guard kid and like a Traore, and we're just and we'll go from there. Yeah, I guess that's the fascinating part about this season, right? Is that they didn't learn anything last year. Yeah, they didn't get the data collection season, and because of that, I think they bought themselves a little bit of patience in terms of like job security, because it's like, what do you want us to do? But
my impression is the front office isn't feeling the heat per se, but they know that after this draft cycle, the screws are going to be put to them.
Well, it's hard to sell in the Bruno Caboclo of NBA franchises. They can't always be 2 years away from being 2 years away. At some point,
just don't have the guy. That's the thing, is like, let's just take Scoot at his absolute best. He's still not the guy. Like,
right, you probably can't win a championship with a 6'2" point guard.
Scoot fully personified is still not the guy, and that's what I tried to tell everybody last year. Was like, look, as good as Scoot it could be, the likelihood that he is your franchise building block is very unlikely. And that's the thing, is like, so much has to be built into God, hoping and praying that the star that they can draft is 6'6" or taller, because it's just Rocco Zikarsky, come on down.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. It's tricky because they might learn what they have in February, and what they might learn is not enough, and that will put them in a tough spot. But I would probably be more, I don't know, anxious isn't the right word, because I don't care in the grand scheme, but like, I would probably be more aggressive in moving off the vets than they have been. But I was also like really in favor of them doing that in February, and now it's August. So like, ain't nothing changed for me.
I remember talking to you, I think it was like one of the last games of the season, and you said something about moving two guys. And I went, not going to happen. I go, one for sure. Like, one is going to happen. But I was like, beyond that, man, I don't, unless something drastic. And again, the Lakers being drastic is something to change. Can I just say as a side, and I'm sure we'll talk about Jeremy at some point in time, all of the national NBA media calling Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss war criminals after the Olympics is just has been truly fantastic stuff. Just, I love them all coming together.
I will see. The Lakers have a powerful brand. We'll see what becomes of them. I was on Locked On Lakers, and I said that I said, here, let me do this for you clean. It's like, I really think that the Lakers are going to stink soon. I was like, and I would trade one. If they would give you one wholly unprotected pick for Jeremy Grant, I would jump at it because I think they're going to stink. And they were saying, this guy's a Lakers hater. And I said, no, I'm just a regular hater. That's equal opportunity, baby. Equal opportunity. Okay. We haven't talked Jeremy Grant. We haven't talked Donovan Clingan. We haven't talked some of the young wings. Danny, would you come back for Wednesday's program and we can touch on some stuff we've missed?
Absolutely.
Okay, dear listeners, join us for that one. It'll be in your feeds tomorrow, 3 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, also on YouTube, free on all your platforms. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.